Live. Give me a few minutes here. I want to check on some things. Okay, I'm live. Sorry, it took me a minute. It's been a while since I've done a stream like on everything, and so all my settings were messed up, and I was trying to fix them. But I told Father Peter I was going to do this stream because I did not expect. I should have expected that the post that I made on X would create such a hubbub. Boy, there are some angry, angry people. And I thought, here's a prime opportunity to talk about this. Oh, why is my stream not available? What's going on here? X. Oh, are they shutting me down? If you can comment, if you're joining, please do. I will rebroadcast this when I'm finished. I just want to make sure. Yeah, it says I'm live. So weird. So you're welcome to comment. You're welcome to disagree with me. But I want to share a few things. And I want to share about my relationship with Father Peter, because there's all these people that are coming on there and they're like, you're just a bunch of Heerites, you're a bunch of rigorists. And the one thing I know, and I'm probably going to delete the post, and this is why. Father Peter is going to have a lot of battles for his church, and I don't want my ex post to create one of them. But I told him, and he didn't even ask me to remove it. I mean, he thought, as I do, some of the responses were pretty like over the top. But then I started going through all of the different ones that were like the most aggressive. And if you click on them, they have like 40 followers. And I recognized, oh, okay, these are the people that have been waiting for something to come out about Father Peter's church, because they're going to attack him. And so first I want to address my relationship with Father Peter and what I think about his ministries. Whether or not I'm a Heerite or rigorist. I'm actually OCA. He's in. Give a little bit of background, and then we're going to talk about it, the separation of men and women in the church. If we get enough people commenting, I am going to give out a free copy of Reception. I don't know where I put it, but Reception of the Heterodox Way. I have a whole bunch of these because I'm going to give a whole bunch of these away. So I'm going to give away this book. I'm gonna give it 24 hours for people to comment on this stream, and the most engaged comment, right? Like you get the most likes or repost or whatever, as long as you're not like gonna burn this book, but you're somebody that truly wants this book for free. I'm gonna send this to you for free because it's a wonderful book, and it like reignited a lot of the hatred towards Father Peter when he put that book out. But let's talk about it, okay? Let's talk about my post. So I went to visit Father Peter's church, which is a real blessing because, as you know, he has been without a bishop for many years. There's been a lot of accusations against him. And his enemies used it to try to discredit anything he said as a priest, any book that he promoted. And it all started around Rona. You know what I mean? He was one of the handful of priests that actually stood up during that insanity that we have forgotten, I think, that happened, and said, wait a minute, what are we doing? What are we doing in our churches? Why are we changing the nature of communion? What are we so afraid of? And he saw that this was a play for forces to control the church, and he became very outspoken, and it cost him to be in limbo for many, many years. There was no accusations of him being immoral or improper or any scandal. It was that he was resisting the powers that be. So, a little history about me. I was baptized over 10 years ago. And my first 5 years of orthodoxy was such a struggle, as many of you know. I traveled a lot. I was a cannabis activist when I got baptized into the church. So I was really engaged in activism. I'm a disabled veteran. I was promoting the use of cannabis for PTSD, as people know, and that was really a part of my life. I was also fighting against child trafficking because my children had been kidnapped, and there was a multi-state battle against state-sponsored child traffickers. And back then, I did a lot of podcasting, and I was very angry, and I really needed the church, but God set me in a place of isolation. And one, my priests at that time, they didn't know what to do with me. I mean, I was in the news a lot. I was in Washington, D.C., working on legislation. I was telling them the things that were going on, how we are fighting child trafficking, Masonic people. And just to show you I'm not crazy, one of the institutions we were fighting, the head of that institution is just about to get sentenced by the FBI for his fraud, right? So we had an impact on that world, but my priest didn't know how to give me counsel because we were involved in so many insane things. And even when they heard the stories, they were just like, I don't even know what to do with this, right? I can give you advice for spiritual things. So my growth was extremely slow. And I didn't know how to be Orthodox. I had been evangelical for 15 years. I went to evangelical college. I went to seminary at Denver Seminary. I was kind of engaged in like Messianic Judaism and all these distortions of Christianity. But I knew at that, during that journey that something was wrong. I knew that I did not have the fullness of the truth. And when I came into Orthodoxy, I realized I had found it. But my thinking, and when you come into the church as a Westerner, our thinking is so alien to true Christian thought. I'm not talking about Western rationalism is not how we approach God, right? There is a mysticism, the mystical teachings of the church. It's about revelation, not information, right? And I was so used to apologetics and proving Bible translations and what Protestants do. And for people to not argue with me when I think something's wrong, to say, come and see. And to put the focus on me encountering God through the mysteries of the church. Because once you encounter God through the mysteries of the church, once you're truly filled with the Holy Spirit and you're achieving theosis and you're being deified, even if it's in small steps, you don't even need to defend it anymore, right? You don't need to defend God when you're in his presence. You don't have to come from a rational perspective. And so I felt like I was having to relearn Christianity all over. And so I struggled hard with the passions. I became resentful. And at the same time, I knew that I needed to grow in the church. So fast forward to 2020, and I worked in a sector where I was critical infrastructure. So I was out there during all the madness, realized it was a hoax. Tried to warn the public. I got a letter before they locked down my state from Homeland Security that authorized me to be out after curfew, that authorized me to get through roadblocks. And I was like, what is this? And I actually put it out on social media thinking I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my career. But people need to know what's coming. And then the lockdown started happening. I moved to a new church, and my priest advised me to go to a master's program at the Antiochian House of Studies, which I did. And that is when my growth in Orthodoxy actually began. That's when I actually began to learn the significance of the liturgy and everything that was going on back there and why we venerate saints. But even through that step, I didn't have anyone really active in my life. My priest at that time was dying of cancer. And so he had a very large church and was semi-unavailable, and he tried the best he could to, be a spiritual father to me and catechize me. But I was so behind the curve. And so I started traveling to different monasteries. I went to Platina and had an amazing experience because my baptismal name is Seraphim, and it's after Seraphim of Serah. But I was brought into the faith by the teaching and I would say intercessions of Seraphim Rose. I recall my Protestant journey where I was presented with his teachings and I was drawn to him, and I was like, and then I found out it was orthodoxy. And even though I felt such a pull in my heart to orthodoxy, it took me many years to even enter the church. But I credit his biography along with a book called The Historical Church by Archpriest Morris that just unlocked my mind, and I realized everything. And I've been to every kind of Protestant church you can think of. I traveled across this country as a street preacher. I traveled across this country protesting the Christian support of the war in Iraq, demanding a new investigation into 9/11. I was a very well-known activist, and so we would go into a city and start preaching on a street corner, and we would tell God, whenever somebody comes up to us, we'll know that's where we're supposed to go. And Christians would come up to us and say, "Come stay with us," and so we stayed with Methodists, we stayed with hardcore Latin Rite Catholics. We stayed with Charismatics, crazy Charismatics, Pentecostal, home church people, Amish people, Mennonite people. Like, we got this exposure to the depth of Protestant Christianity through America, right? But I always knew there that something was off. That book by Archpriest Morris kind of connected it. And so in my journeys going to, I didn't know anything about Father Peter. I did not follow Orthodox ethos. I had just started following it and listening to it a little bit when I had gotten back from Platina. And so a few more months at my church, and I thought, I'm going to go check out this monastery out in Arizona. And some of you know my story. It was a really rough journey, I was really controlled by my passion still. And it was my first lesson learning that, if you're not spiritually prepared for holy things, they can actually be harmful to you, right? Like if you go play with holy things that you read, in the book of Corinthians, that people were dying because they were not perceiving the body of Christ in communion, right? They were handling communion improperly, and it was making people sick and die. And so when I got out there to St. Anthony's, I got sick right out the gate. I was vomiting. I slept for like 24 hours. But I had contacted Father Peter and said, "Hey, I'd like to meet with you," because I was trying to find a priest that would really take the time to catechize me, answer my questions. I was very rough around the edges. I still am, you know what I mean? I had a tendency to offend people. I still do. I'm working on that. Obviously, that's why I'm doing this broadcast, because there's a lot of offended people out there right now. And so I went to confess to one of the priests, and I really got blasted with the depth of my sin. And it really exposed how unhealed I was, how traumatized I'd been through the experiences in my life. And I ended up leaving that monastery in just a fury. I was in tears. I was screaming. I was cussing at the monks. Like, it was demonic inside of me. And I felt like I'm just done going to these places and trying to talk to priests, because you're talking, by this time, it had been 6 years I had been Orthodox and had yet to find a priest that was willing to really take me in as a spiritual father that had the time, that could do it. And I understand now that this is where God had put me, right? This was part of my process of my healing, because this was not everybody's experience in Orthodoxy. I've met many people that have wonderful spiritual fathers and have since them entering the church. And so mine was specific to my wounds. I needed to go through this. But I was so frustrated at that time and disappointed in men and disappointed in the monks. And I was driving away, and then my phone rings, and it's Father Peter. And he says, "Hey, are you in town?" And I was like, "No." And I started yelling. I started cussing at him. I was so mad and upset and crying. And he was like, "Whoa, what is going on?" So I kind of shared with him what happened. And he said, "Come back to the monastery." I said, "I am not going back to that place." And I have a way different relationship with that monastery now. It is a holy place. What happened to me was because of my spiritual state, not because of anything that went wrong with the monks or with that place. And I understand that now. God bless them for dealing with so many raw people with raw wounds. But anyways, he didn't even know me. He didn't have to call me. He didn't have to say anything. I'm screaming at him. He's a priest. And he says, just come back and have breakfast with me in the morning. You don't have to go to the monastery. Just stay one more night. You came out, you said you wanted to talk to me and meet me. And so I did. And we had a great conversation. And for once, I felt like I had met a priest that actually cared about my life, right? And was interested in seeing people grow in the faith and was not afraid of my messiness or my questions or my challenges, which continued through our relationship. We had a few moments, right? But, and that's when I really started paying attention to Orthodox ethos and which I encourage people to do and listening to his teachings. And at that point, in conjunction with my schooling, I really, really seriously began to grow. Like I began to understand orthodoxy at the core level like I never, and it just began to root me deeper and deeper in the faith. So I'm not like trying to be a Heerite, or I think that's a stupid term to begin with. But I can say this, that I've known him for many years now. I traveled to Mount Athos with him. And even there, I saw how much people in power are threatened by him, right? Like when we were in Athos, it was pretty, let me see, I don't know what's going on with I'm not seeing any comments and I don't know why. So if you're commenting, I'm trying to figure out. Well, let me finish the story and then I'll try to figure out the comments here. But, I saw how highly he was respected among the elders of that place. I learned more about his life. I saw, how he prayed, how he conducted services, how he pushed himself. And there was nothing in any part of that where I could cast blame. But as you know, there was still that issue of him not having a bishop. And at one point in time, I disconnected from Orthodox ethos, not for anything for Father Peter necessarily, but because I realized that his struggle was, I was using it to justify my own rebellion in some respects, right? And I had a conversation with him about it, and just said, I think I'm going to disconnect for a time. And he was very gracious and kind to me, even though I was not kind about it. So this isn't just like a blind following. And then, God kind of rebuked me and I apologized to him and was just continuing to pray that God would restore him. And then God did. As many of you know, recently, he was received by a bishop in the Romanian Patriarchy. And so I wanted to go out and visit his church. And my post was probably one of the first posts about his church from somebody that had been there. And I did not intend to create such a chaotic moment on X. And part of the reason I'm going to end up erasing it is because it is a small thing to me, but the fact that so many people do not understand this shows me how cooked we are in a lot of ways, right? Like the traditions of the church, the traditions of a patriarchal system is so offensive to people. Oh wait, maybe this is it. Hold on a second. That I was completely shocked at some of the people's responses. All right, give me a second here. I am going to try to get this chat box going here. Oh, there it is. Maybe it's working. Maybe. I don't know. I might not be able to respond to your comments. Let me see. That's a schedule stream. It's been so long since I've done this. Widgets, editor, overlay, dashboard. And I'm not seeing any comments. So I'll review the comments below the stream in order to give the book away. But so I felt it was important to give that context, because this isn't about being a rigorist, and this isn't about, blindly following some priest, but that having someone in my life that's been a consistent witness of Christ, that I highly respect as a priest, it was a very amazing moment to see that that situation was resolved. So what did I share? If you didn't see the post because you're watching this recording, I basically posted that I felt like it was a blessing, and why certain elements fear Father Peter, because of the agendas that they have to do exactly. Hold on a second here. I am going to fix this. No. I don't know, man. Well, next time. Next time I do a broadcast, I'll make sure I get these chats working right. But anyways, my comment was just based on, for one, the church was separated. Women were on one side, men were on another side, right? And I've always kind of enjoyed that tradition, okay? This has been a tradition that goes all the way back to the synagogue, right? Except even in the temple of God, and here's where Christ has elevated women, right? And women, you are precious. Like the Bible is clear that men who abuse their wives, their prayers will be blocked. You are not lesser in value, right? But there are different calls and responsibilities to men and to women. And there's order and honor throughout our culture and church that we've seen throughout history. So in the early temple of God, going into the church, men and women were separated. But the women couldn't even enter the temple of God. They had to go to the court of the women, and they were pretty much equal to Gentiles, right? There were a small handful of women that were virgins, like the Theotokos, who were allowed in the temple under a very specific ministry that they had, as they were called the temple virgins. But once they reached womanhood, right, which meant they had their menstruation, they couldn't be in there anymore, right? And so with the coming of the church, the women were no longer in the back, but they came side by side with men into the church, right? There was an equality, but there still was a structure that men are the heads of the home, right? We know this. I was reading about Constantinople, and I want to share this with you in my notes. I actually have a term for it, because for a while there in the churches, there was actually like a court of women, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it was called the Ginoconitis, but it was basically a women's section or gallery in all the Byzantine churches, and the genders were segregated, right? It was located on the upper level of the church, and this was clear to the 15th century. So from the 4th to the 15th century, Byzantine churches practiced this. So they overlooked the main nave, and it provided visibility to the offer while maintaining separation between men and women. There was also the teachings of St. Cyril and his catechetical lectures, where he says, "Let men be with men and women with women. For now I need the example of Noah's ark, in which were Noah and his sons and his wives and his son wives. For though the ark was one, the door was yet shut, yet had things been suitably arranged. If the church is shut and you are all inside, Yet let there be a separation, men with men and women with women, lest the pretext of salvation become an occasion of destruction. Even if there be a fair pretext for sitting near each other, let passions be put away. Further, let the men while sitting have a useful book, and let one read, let another listen, so on and so forth. This culture, this practice of women and men being separate in the church also carried on into the Protestant church. This isn't only so. I'm going to go through some of the comments here in a minute, and I'm going to address some of those. And again, I'm telling you, a lot of them are bots. They're people that hate Father Peter. They're mad that he now has an altar and a bishop and the ability to stand in the church. But that was one of the things that I thought was impressive, right? They do this at the monasteries. Many monasteries, women still are not allowed. So to those who think it's wrong for women and men to be separate in the church, is it wrong for women to be forbidden to go to Mount Athos? Do you hold that opinion that that's somehow oppressive and wrong? Because if so, you're wrong. Do you hold the opinion that the bishop should be female, like the Anglicans? Because I'll tell you right now, with the Anglicans, they have no bishop. Their bishop is an empty chair. Because Christianity has always been and will always be a patriarchal system. But as we carry through history and we carry through the rise of feminism and the Masonic revolution that overthrew the monarchy, we begin to see the shift. So I looked up even in culture. So there was another part to the post where I stated that the order that was enforced to people to go get their food was the men went and got food first, and then women and children. And for some reason that scandalized people. But this is not this hasn't been an uncommon practice through all of history. If you go and it's not even hard to research, and you look at every single culture for the past 2,000 years and before, men were always served before women, both pagan and Christian. That's never changed until modern history. You go to ancient Greece, women weren't even allowed to dine with men. Same with Rome. And then the man that was the host, the man that was in charge, the man that had the most social credit, always got served first. Serving men first reflected patriarchal household authority. It's not about men demanding that these things happen. It's about honoring the patriarchal system. It's about value. It's about teaching respect, right? Teaching children that delayed gratification is okay. It's okay to put elders before you. Like, we've lost that in our culture as well. You know, there's scriptures that say that young children should stand before the white-headed. They should give place to the elders. We don't even teach that anymore. Sometimes you go into churches and people let their kids run amok. They're running up almost into the altar. They're playing with toys out there, and it's madness. We're not teaching these levels of respect and order anymore. So it's not a sense of order that, hey, you're going to starve over there and you have less value, but it's putting honor where honor is due. Traditional African, Middle East, South Asian cultures, men ate first. Men were seen as providers. Strong gender hierarchies. Medieval Europe, kings and nobles were served first. These were Christian cultures, right? Women's status depended on their class, but even noble women ranked less than men in the order of things. It wasn't just men first, it was rank first. And there were reasons for this. Christ is the head over the church. He is first. The patriarchal head of the church is a man. It will never be a woman. Though women hold a very high place and have their own set of work that men cannot do, that puts great value on who they are and what their responsibility is in the church. This is why we resist female deacons. This is why we don't have female priests. Does your church, when the bishop come, do they not set him a place aside? Do they not serve the bishop first in a place of honor? That he doesn't demand it, some may. But it's putting honor where honor is due. Early modern Europe, all the way to the 1800s, it was aristocratic etiquette is when it began to change, right? And it started in France. So it wasn't until the Victorian era in the late 1800s where some of this began to change. But the real changing point came in the 1960s and the 1980s. In the 50s and the 40s, because I'll tell you something. I was talking to my wife about this, and you know, she was agreeing with some of you in the comments, right? But I told her, I said, you remember her grandma, my wife is Native, and not all Native cultures are like this, but her grandma, you know, taught her daughters and her granddaughters, you are to be homemakers. You are to honor your husband. You are to keep your children in order. And I told her, don't you remember there was a time when we were eating at Thanksgiving and my wife went to serve one of the children first, and her grandma right in front of me slapped her hand and said, don't you dare. You serve your husband first. And I was actually shocked because I had never seen that before. But that was the culture of her time. This isn't like this is something that was just made up today to dishonor women. We've been so feminized. The order has been so put on top of its head that we have women running around in bishop costumes over heads of entire churches, which is crazy. And so if you look at Hispanic culture, if you look at Asian culture, nowhere will you find historically this women and children take precedence unless it comes to like danger or warfare, you know, where it's an issue of protecting. But when it came to meals, when it came to order, when it came to structure, this was not an uncommon thing, okay? And many of the old world churches still act this way. And you could still go into churches. I know there's even still Protestant churches like the Anabaptists, like the hardcore Anabaptists. It's still the same. And there are many reasons for this. But there is nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with it. This is how things have been. We are living in an age where men are intentionally being destroyed, where masculinity is being declared as toxic, right? Where no-fault divorce is ravaging men. The suicide rate of men is through the roof. They're being stripped of their children. It's completely been flipped on its head, where men occupy the lowest place. And it shouldn't be so. It shouldn't be so. So it's not an issue of forcing women to be lesser. I mean, think about Titus. And I know, like, if you post verses like these online, there's always the yeah, but people, right? You go out there and post a verse that says, you know, wives, submit to your husband. And then you'll see all the feminists in there. Yeah, but men need to be worthy of that. Yeah, but they need to submit to us too. Yeah, but. You know, we've left the culture where the young people wait their turn, where they respect the elder, where they stand up for the white-headed, where the wives honor their husbands, honor the heads of the church as it should be. Not out of force, not out of compulsion, but out of love, out of beauty, out of order. Okay. I mean, what's the purpose of the older women in the church? Why don't we see this as much? Let me read it to you. Older women are to train the younger women to love their children and husband. Why do younger women need to be trained to love their husbands and children? I mean, the Bible doesn't address things unless they're things that are problems within the human condition. And it says to be pure and to be keepers at home, how to be good homekeepers, how to be their executive, producer of the home. Why is that so offensive to people now? Because they must destroy the patriarchy. Everywhere you see the patriarchal order destroyed, you see death, destruction, the destruction of children. There is one last surviving true patriarchy in the world now that monarchy has been destroyed. I mean, the only reason the British monarchy remained is because it was ran by Queen Elizabeth, who was pretty much a devil worshiper, child eater. They will not suffer a strong masculine monarch, but the British crown is utterly destroyed, right? But if you look at it, the home has been destroyed because the patriarchal order has been corrupted, has been destroyed. You forget, it wasn't even very long ago in American history where we so honored that patriarchal order that women voted through their husbands. Ooh, got some lightning. And so I'm going to jump over to X here, and I'm going to address some of these comments real quick, and then I'm going to let y'all go because I've been here a long time and I need to work. But I'm just baffled by this, right? People are like, oh, you're just going to leave the pregnant women to starve and die. And I'm like, stop being sensationalist. It wasn't the fact that men and women were separated or that there was order in who should receive food so that things would be all done properly, right? Men can take care of their own families. They could get the food for their pregnant wife and kids, right? But there was an order to things that made sense. It doesn't mean it's like dogma for all of the church. It just baffles me. But I put in there that they hate Father Peter because of his traditionalism, because he resists the ecumenical destruction of the church. Ecumenists are destroying the church. They want to uproot the order just like they're doing with the Anglicans and everywhere else. Because then the power leaves from the home, the power leaves from our institutions. All right. Give me a second here. I am going to try real quick one more time. See if I can figure out these comments. See, last time I had a comment box. Let me see. What if I go that way? No. Oh, refresh chat. Oh, I got a lot of viewers. Man, I want this chat to work so I can answer your questions. All right, give me a second. You're going to give me a second. I'm going to try to figure this out. Okay, refresh chat. Let's do Twitter. I'm going to sign into X to see if... And then we're going to address some of these. We're going to address some of these ridiculous comments. Here, let me try this. Let me get you over here. I don't need to see all that. There we go. Log in. Hey, this might work. Dun, dun, dun. Where is it? Come on, come on, come on. And again, I'm going to tell you again, put your comments under this video, whether it's YouTube, X, or Facebook, and the comment that gets the most leg room, that's not like someone that's hateful, but someone that really wants this book is going to get a free copy of Reception of the Heterodox. I will mail it out to you today. I will, as soon as I'm done with this stream, go down and take care of that. All right, let's check multi-stream. All right, I'm going to put hello chat. You guys tell me if you can see it. All right, I got the stream chat up. If you're watching and you have a chat question, try to put it in right now. Let me see if I can see you. Man, we're getting whacked with the storm right now. And so, I don't see anything yet. But I'm going to go through some of the comments. And I do want to say, I mean, Father Peter didn't ask me to delete the post. I don't know, 500,000 people were going to be engaged with it. I mean, in a sense, he agreed with me that some of these things we need to talk about. The issue of female deacons is not going away. What's happening to the Anglican Church is not going away. There is going to be a further division between those who are going to align with this institutions of the Antichrist that corrupt the patriarchy of the church. And then there's going to be the churches that stick with tradition and fight with that. Do I think that oh, yeah, Golden Tongue Disciple, I can see your comment from X, just from X. All right, I got the chat up. So if you think I'm wrong, you can go ahead and ask me a question right now. You can challenge me on the things I'm saying. If you think Christianity isn't a patriarchy, please explain to me how you came to that conclusion. If you think that the separation of men and women in the church is something that's not historical, yep, it works. Redwood, I see you. Good. All right, now we can have a conversation. Now that I've told you my whole story, I'm going to pull up my X here on my other computer here, and I'm going to start going through some of these comments so I can keep the chat up. And just as an update, so I stopped broadcasting for a long time, right? That fight with the state-sponsored child traffickers was really draining on me. Let me close my window. And orthodoxy was changing me so much that I just felt like I didn't have much to say. But many of you know that recently, this year, I quit my job and I went to start working with, I want to work with people in addiction, people in prisons. I want to show them how orthodoxy can set them free, and sometime, hopefully by the end of this year, start opening sober living homes that are going to be non-monastic, spiritual, sober living homes that are going to have a treatment protocol based on being engaged with the church, based on the understanding of noetic healing, and maybe provide a resource for people that are struggling with addiction. And that's my hope. That's my dream. And so part of that is I'm going to start doing broadcasts again. I'm going to do a series on noetic healing. I've been talking to my priest about it. I'm going to run my stuff through him to make sure I'm not off the chain, and get his blessing. But then I think because it took me so long to grasp these things. And when you go work in the therapeutic communities, you know, all of their evidence-based theories, still people have a huge recidivism rate in going back to prison. People are still relapsing. Fentanyl overdose, #1 killer of teens in certain areas of the country. And so I think there needs to be some of these teachings on on noetic healing and what it is, and then some resources for people that want to get free. Okay. Let me see here. I'm going over to the post, the offending post. So let's look at some of these comments. So some people said, because I said sit in the post. No, they do not have pews. Father Peter does not have pews. He's like every other Orthodox church out there right now. It was so packed. People were standing outside. And I told him at coffee hour, I said, you're gonna have this problem wherever you go. Because it was a beautiful service. And it was Byzantine chant, and it was great chanting and kind people. And I actually tried to sit on the women's side because my church is very large. They don't uphold that tradition. I don't judge them for that. And I was going to bring up that one point, but I went to sit down, and this lady almost smacked me. She was like, "No, what are you doing?" And she pointed to the other side. She said, "Go over there." I was like, whoa, sorry. And that's when I looked around and I realized it was separated, right? And I was like, oh, this is amazing, right? I like some of these old traditions. I personally believe when they have the call of the catechumen, and I did this when I was a catechumen, and they said, all catechumens depart, I departed. I went out, and we would sit and we would read spiritual things, and I think that's a wonderful practice that should still happen. I think catechumens should be catechized but I'm not a bishop. I don't get to make those choices. But on all these comments I'm about to go over, the things that's amazing to me is, and some people said it, number one, this isn't your parish. You don't get to determine the order of operations, right? And there was a high level of disrespect towards Father Peter as a priest. No matter what you think about him, he is a priest in good standing under a bishop. And how he runs his church is his purview unless the bishop tells him something different. And bless his heart, when he was like, this could lead to a good conversation, we need to talk about these things, I told him, you're going to have enough battles, right? You just started. I don't want to start your first one. And that's why I'm going to delete the post. But first I'm going to address it with these things. And so I said, people stand, they're not standing. Someone was saying, oh, you're just going to let the pregnant women starve and the kids starve. No. Any man with a pregnant wife, if the men are first, go get your wife a plate. It's just about order. We weren't talking about a sinking ship. We're not like all the men jump in the lifeboats. And here's the thing. I want to rabbit trail for one thing. If you think about it, the feminists helped destroy the patriarchy in the church and in the home. And let me tell you how you know you're infected with a little bit of feminism. When you hear that saying that the older women should teach the younger women to love their husbands and be keepers at home, do you feel a little flash of anger? Feel a little rage in your heart kind of come up? Yeah, but my husband needs to be you're a feminist. I'm just saying. Or at least you've been infected with feminism. You need to get that out, because a true patriarchal woman will be like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, this is an honor. I don't care. This is not anything that bothers me. I gift my home in a different way. Women have the most influence over the children. I mean, think about this. When you see like an NFL star, or you see someone, that got famous and they get on camera for the first time, what's the first thing they say? Hi, Mom. They don't say, hi, Dad. The women have the heart of the children. The women have they have the control of the future. The Theotokos is the most highly exalted above all in our churches as the mother of God. She's on our icons, like massively. It's mandatory. All right, let's see. Less question, more stream of conscious commentary. Redwood. And then I'm going to go over some more comments. It doesn't seem that feminists, Marxists, rationalists understand the cyclical honor to inherit patriarchy and thereby look at as oppressive and wicked. Okay, and I'll say this. There have been oppressive elements of patriarchy. Of course, there's been bad monarchs. There's been, sorry, my light's bothering me. I'll tell you this, if you go read Saint Paisios, when he talks about women complaining about getting slapped around by their husbands, what he says. Because there was domestic violence in the Greek culture during his time. And what does he say to the women? He doesn't justify it necessarily, but he says things that would shock people. Because men used to rule the home, but to say it was just all oppression is garbage. It's a Marxist revisionist history, because their goal first was to destroy the monarchies, which they have, then destroy the homes, the patriarchal home centers, which they did, and now they're going after the women. See, women? When you destroy the patriarchy, now you literally have men destroying you who say they're women. That's the outcome. Because this satanic destruction, there is no end to it, except it'll bring death and destruction to all of our institutions, to our homes. And, all right. Let's see here. Honor, inherit. They look at it as oppressive and wicked, maybe due to their attempts to redefine all roles to masculine. But I think they fundamentally have a lack of understanding of what love is. They view it purely as transactional, and feminists constantly believe that there. I don't think the rest of the comment came up. Yeah, but it's spiritual at its core, right? They are going to try to destroy the Christian patriarchy. They have to. They have to. I mean, what is that scripture? All right. I'm gonna give you a test. If you got a little bit of feminism infection, whether you're male or female, how does this scripture make you feel? Hold on a second. I know I'm gonna get some. All right, 1 Corinthians 11:7. I'm going to get some people that are going to be mad about this. The yeah buts are going to come out really fast. It says, a man should not cover his head, since he is the image and the glory of God. But women is the glory of man. Women are the glory of man. Did you feel a little twinge? Did your face get a little flushed? You feel yeah but coming? You can put it in the comments. It doesn't mean you're lesser. And you see when they distort all of it, now we have men out there that think they can breastfeed babies, that think they can menstruate. They're like stealing everything from true feminine women. So that they won't stop with just destroying the men. They're going to come after you as well, and they are. You can't even go, women, into a bathroom without possibly running into a man with a mental illness that wants to take your place. And actually a lot of them, I'll say, are hateful of women. They hate women. All right. Everything says our parish doesn't follow any of these rules, and that's fine. Whatever your parish does follow. I like tradition. I think the more we impact the culture, I don't think it's something we should split a church over. See, Father Peter is in a genuine place where he's starting a new church. If a priest has, a huge 20-year-old parish, it could really damage some things if he just walks in and says, okay, we're going to do things different, women over here, men over here, right? But if we change the culture, through people beginning to identify these practices as being okay, if we have leadership that's willing to stand in some of these older traditions and to honor the men and to honor the patriarchal system and to resist the feminization of our culture, then it'll change the culture. Let's see. One person says they love the chief seats. Barefoot Pilgrim, you're right. Some people do. I'm not saying clergy are perfect, right? But this isn't about chief seats. This is about respecting the order and hierarchy of our culture and church and what we value as Christians, as men, as a society. I mean, there are many reasons why men were served first. Some of it was social status. Some of it was, warrior status. They needed extra food. Some of it was, because the men would come in and eat dinner and then go back out to the fields, right? And I can hear in my head the people already saying, there is no male or female in Christ. Yeah, but then why did the apostles give very strict roles for men and women? Because you're misinterpreting a scripture that is talking how women, because in Roman culture, as a dad, if I could take my wife out and my kids, I had a legal right that if I was done with this, I could take you all out and I wouldn't even get in trouble for it. In Islamic culture, it's still like that to some degree. You hear about honor killings, fathers killing their daughters. Christianity elevated women to an equal value and status with men, but there still was a hierarchy, and the hierarchy is not evil. The hierarchy is what protects godliness and order in our culture. Nepsis says, meet and right. Thank you, Nepsis, you're right. This crazy person, let me see how many people they have. I can't even pronounce their name. Yeah, small account. And he says, sounds chaotic. How can having children learn to delay their satisfaction and men representing their homes and being first in the order of things be chaotic? Teach me that. And I'll tell you this much. In the monasteries, they do the same with clergy. If you're wearing a cassock and somebody tries to go before someone in a cassock, even if they're a reader in the monasteries like in Mount Athos, you will get moved out of the way. The monks will say, what are you doing? And it's not because you're lesser, because you're not a priest. It's because it's the order. It's understanding the hierarchy. All right, this guy says, Seraphim, I can't even pronounce that, Zavedinsky said that in ancient church, first the men would commune, then the women. Not uncommon in history. Let's see. Jenny says this practice of men eating before women and kids is really some weird, blatant lack of masculinity energy. Is it? Is it lack of masculine energy? Or is it restoring the foundations that have been torn up and destroyed by a culture that says men are lesser? It started in my generation with Ted Bundy, and Homer Simpson and where they started showing fathers as idiots and worthless and incapable and disconnected and not leading their homes. It has been a systematic assault on men, on masculinity, on the family, since I've been alive and before. This person says, since people are commenting, I'm just going to jump in. I cook almost every weekend for trapeza. The children for a very long time have gone first. They should not. Why? Why should they not? It says, feed me sushi. All right, feed me sushi. He says they often pile things on their plates because their eyes are bigger than their stomachs. A lot of food is wasted. The order should be clergy first, along with servers. After that, I don't care if it's men or women. But it is at the priest's discretion. So if that's what the priest says, you know what I mean? Yeah, and children can wait. There's nothing wrong with children waiting. When women and children rule your culture based on their behavior, based on their philosophy of life, the book of Isaiah says that's actually a condemnation and a judge of God because men have abdicated their duties. And that doesn't mean that the man first can't get plates for those people, but it's recognizing the masculine. We need to recognize the masculine. What about ladies first? Well, I researched that, and ladies first is a modern invention, and it actually kind of started in France, surprise, surprise, Masonic, homosexual France. very feminized culture that we've had to save multiple times, is where that kind of began in the Enlightenment times. Let's see. Bin Dejarin said the technological age has only made it more obvious that there is an inherent natural order, whether we agree or not. Can you address the one comment that keeps saying it's gay that men want to go first? Golden Tongue Disciple. How do you address that? Okay, that's just... if someone could explain how that's gay, maybe I could address it, But just insulting people, just calling things names, just using an ad hominem, that is not. What's there to address with that? I would go and look at that account, and I bet they have like 40 people, because I recognize that people have been waiting for the ability to jump on Father Peter, and I gave him that opportunity, and I've apologized to him for that. But he's very gracious. Catherine says it's not really common in the USA, and she's right, but it used to be, Catherine. It used to be. You always served the Father first. Families ate dinner together, and guess who got served first? The Father. There are people that are twisting it, and I was saying the men would eat first, and then the woman. No, that's not what I was saying. The men were served first, then the women and children. The men that were married could serve. The men could bring their children with them if they had young children. It wasn't like the women had to sit there famine, just hoping there's meatballs left when they're done. Like, come on, guys. Terry says, this isn't tradition, it's archaeologism. Archaeologism. But it's tradition. So that's an absolute, either that person's absolutely historically ignorant and can't do basic research that every culture throughout history has had this hierarchy of men first, both Christian and pagan, or they're just, let me look. Let me see how many people. Oh, 617 followers. He's got Shrek as his, and he's mocking Christianity on his thing. So yeah, he's just a troll. Let me go back here. And I'm not going to address all of these, but I want you guys to see this is ridiculous. Ruth. Okay, Ruth N. Is not even a real woman, not even Orthodox. You have these people that aren't Orthodox commenting. They're saying it's very Islamicist. It's very Islamic, what you guys think about women. She, he, it, whatever it is, I'm not sure. I think it's actually a kid and either this Indian guy or a young teenager boy, but he says this custom is foreign to the West and should stay that way. This is why I say American Orthodox converts are very often Muslim coded. We're Muslim. I don't even know what they're talking about. Islam. And then I commented back, I said, you're not even Orthodox. And they were like, oh yeah, I know. It's like, but I went to an Orthodox church. Okay, then why are you even commenting on our order of things? You don't need to comment. We don't want to hear your opinion on that, right? And just so people know, Islam at one point in time was considered a Christian heresy. And they took a lot of things from the church and incorporated that into Islam. If you listen to Arabic Byzantine chant, and the Middle East was once entirely Christian, and there were entire Arab tribes of Christians, it sounds very similar to Islamic chant for a reason. But it's not because we took anything from Islam. Well, the Muslim coded thing I think it's a new Jesuit West. There's these Western, I don't want to say Western right, because I like a lot of the Western right people. I support them because they're supported by the bishops. I have a Western Rite monastery around me. But there are people that attack the Eastern tradition as if Western people shouldn't have anything to do with it, even though the liturgy that we serve of John Chrysostom, or the liturgy of St. Basil, or the liturgy of James, was practiced both in the West and the East. Cyril and Methodius, when they went to the Russians and created a whole new language so the Russians could convert to Christianity. They brought both the Western liturgical practice and the Eastern. There was no problems, right? There wasn't, oh, this is Western, this is, it's crazy. But that's their new approach because they're trying to stop this convert outflow. These converts are just leaving the Catholic Church. They're leaving the Reformed Church. They're bailing out because America is being Christianized by the true faith, by the true light. And like me, all these people in evangelicalism that are sitting there dying inside, and they know it's garbage, and they know that the production that they're seeing in the rock band, that they don't feel spiritual about it. They hate communion because it's not even exalted. People are telling them it doesn't mean anything. It's just a symbolic act. And they're like, this can't be the true faith. And then they walk into an Orthodox church, and I've seen them. I remember one time this guy walked into our church, and we got a beautiful church. And our men and women are not separated, and I don't judge my priest for that. He can run his church however the bishop and him decide it needs to be ran. But I think there are men that stand on one side because they stand by the icon of Christ, and so on and so forth. Anyways, this guy walked in, and I could tell he was in the military, and because we're near a military base, they kind of stand out. They got a vibe, right? An aura. And he was just like, and he was looking around, and he wouldn't move. And I walked up to him, I said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I don't know what to do." And I was like, "Well, just come in and pray." He's like, "But I don't want to offend anyone." I mean, he was in so awe of the holiness and the beauty and the aura and the spirit in that place. He couldn't even move. So they come in and they're like, "I know this is true." Now, for me, it was kicking and screaming. I was very anti-Catholic. I was very rooted in a Protestant ideology of constantly protesting, being Christian based on what I was against, street preacher, activist, craziness. All right, let's see here. This person says, honestly, Glenn, getting the women to start wearing head coverings and modest skirts and getting men not to show up in jeans or with tattoos exposed should be the number one priority. I think modesty should be somewhat enforced in the churches, sure, but you got to be careful, right? You don't want to just judge people and assume. Someone walks into the church for the first time and it's a woman, she doesn't cover her head and she doesn't understand that, or maybe she's immodest, or there's a man and he's in shorts and flip-flops, Maybe it's his first time. You got to be gracious. But if you're a mature Orthodox Christian, male or female, yeah, you should be modest. And I wear jeans to church sometimes. Sorry, it's Colorado formal, right? Formal and you go to the opera here, there's people in hiking boots and shorts. Okay, that's just how we do it here. But no, I do think there should be, like when I go up and sing in the choir, I try to be dressed appropriately, because we've lost this idea of gravitas in our culture. We got, what's that Pennsylvania congressperson's name? He shows up in a hoodie with a tie around the hoodie. That man should be thrown out of the Congress and never allowed back in till he shows up properly dressed, honoring the institution. You showed up like that in front of a king, you would have been beheaded. We've lost this idea of gravitas, of sobriety, of propriety, of giving honor due to institutions that deserve that honor, or to men. And that's why we're in the condition. And someone said, sit, there's pews. No, it's a small thing. There were some chairs for people to sit, but no, you don't. In traditional Christianity, you do not sit. There are not pews. I know people practice that. It is not the tradition. The Hagia Sophia did not have pews. We stand in worship in the Orthodox Church, but you have to be merciful. There has to be chairs for pregnant ladies, chairs for people that are sick or infirm or can't stand. So it's not like, anyways, let's see here. In my parish, we follow women and men separate in the church, but for trapeza, we're all still together. Someone interpreted what I said to mean that women and men didn't even eat together. No, it was just the order in getting your food. It was just refreshing for me to see a church that emphasized male headship and leadership, and for to have the traditional practice of men and women separated, because it's not a bad thing. Who's calling me? Sorry, I'm doing a live stream. Can't take your call. All right, I'm going to look a few more. Imagine telling a Georgian to sit in church, they'd be offended. Hey, and same with, I had a priest, and he was Arab, and the thought of, he would see people sitting on the floor at certain times, and he was appalled. You don't sit in church. And I'm not saying we should be rigorous and we should be so strict and it's about legalism and it's about the rules. That is not Father Peter. If Father Peter does something, he does it with wisdom. He does it in truth. He has a reason for it. He can go back and show you how it's a historical practice. He's not just implementing something to be some kind of legalist. He's the last person, in my opinion, that is that way. He's very gracious. And that's why I was always so mad about the attacks upon him. And that's why I'm going to support his church. I'm going to donate to his church. I'm going to spread Orthodox ethos again as much as I possibly can. I want to see that church thrive. It's not even my church. I'm going to go visit it because it is a blessing. I went to his conferences, man, and it was like being at Mount Athos when we go do the evening service. It was like 4 hours long. You get a taste of monasticism, and it was very beautiful, and real like Athonite Byzantine chant. If you haven't heard it, if you haven't been present in that experience, it's so beautiful. Except they do it in English. Like you go to St. Anthony's, it's in Greek, and if you don't know a little bit of Greek, or you're not real familiar with the structure of the liturgy, or they're doing a service that you're not familiar with, it's hard to follow. But, okay, Auntie Yaga says, this is repulsive, hostile to the natural order, and unchristian. How is men being the head repulsive to the natural order? When has that ever... And this is what I'm talking about. These people are just throwing out shame and accusations on Father Peter. That's it. Catholicism isn't Islam. We don't segregate the congregation based on anything. Again, they have no backing, no fact, no nothing. Maybe your Baptist church will take you back. Oh, well, at least you know a little bit of my history. But unfortunately, most of the Baptist church don't segregate. Let's see. Oh, Natty for Theotokos. She's one that when I say wives, submit to your husbands, she just burns in her. She'll be the first one to jump. Natty for Theotokos. I'm surprised she hasn't blocked me yet. She's totally a feminist. Let's see. Father Peter Heers is a fundamentalist, modernist, cosplaying as traditional, and I'm praying. Can you believe just that attitude? To a priest she doesn't know, or a church she's never been to just utterly defame and disrespect the priesthood in that manner is crazy, because he finally got given a diocese and he's been kicked out of 2 previously. Blah, 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 blah. She's spiritual abuse. She's just saying nonsense. Slander and nonsense. I mean, I have never seen him be abusive in any way, shape, or form. He leads the way. When we were in Athos, and I'm in pretty good shape, he ran me into the ground. When we were on donkeys, he was going up the stairs on foot, and we tried to get him to get on the donkeys, and he was like, no, this is good for my soul. And he walked all the way up, halfway up the mountain, and he prayed every day. And he would try, if we had a service that we missed somewhere, we would do it where we were at. He leads by his life and his example. Let's see here. People are calling this a LARP. It's tradition. Yeah, and this other person's saying sometimes they let kids go first. My church does that as well. That's because the kids then go to some kind of Bible study before we all eat at coffee hour. So it's economia. It's the way that the priest wants to do it. This person says, is this supposed to be a good thing? Separating men and women in the church. Sounds like a lot of cruelty wrapped up in self-righteousness. What does that even mean? My mom and I are this, let's see, how many people does this one have? Oh, 167 followers. So most of these are trolls, and I'm going to stop reading the trolls, but they're like, my mom and I are cradle orthodox. This is unorthodox. Show me. Unknown quantity girl. Show me. Show me where this is not a historical practice. Another person says it's lame chauvinism. Now, and then another person tried to say that like the military, the soldiers eat before the officers. And I was like, what are you talking about? In most militaries, the officers don't even eat with the enlisted people. They're completely segregated. Completely. There's an officer's mess and there's an enlisted mess. And you don't cross-pollinate unless you're enlisted and you're serving the officers. So I don't know what military you were in, but you're either full of it or you've never been in the military. One group not mentioned the choir. Do they brush past everyone and cut in line while singing like I've experienced in many churches? Well, the choir are all men in this church. So they were first. And then somebody else said, I guess Jesus shouldn't have washed the disciples' feet. And I reminded them that Jesus wasn't washing the women's feet. He was washing his disciples' feet, and the women were washing his feet. And also he was served first. Even at the Last Supper, he was served first. He took the bread and he broke it and he served everybody else. I mean, this isn't even hard. This isn't even hard, guys. But what it shows me is two things. One, a lot of this, and this is what I told Father this morning in some text, is they're watching him. And they're going to try to attack him for anything that he does. And I encourage people to support Uncut Mountain Press. I encourage you to support Orthodox Ethos. I encourage you, especially if you're a catechumen, and I would reach out to your priest. I wouldn't just, don't be self-willed. You know what I mean? But if you want to learn, if you want to be able to ask any question and get a sound response from a very learned priest, and he's got a PhD, he studied in Greece, he was a priest in Greece, he was baptized on Mount Athos, he's friends with a lot of those great elders, then it's a good place to go because he'll answer your question. He'll take the time, right? He doesn't sit on a high horse. All right, let me do a couple more comments. Like, most of this just shouldn't even be addressed, right? Like, I understand this, guys, that we have differences. The only thing I wanted to address, and the main thing I wanted to address, it's the same thing. Father Peter said clergy, men, then women, then children. Father Peter didn't say clergy, then men, then women, and children. Clergy go first in communion. When we're all waiting for the curtain to open, they're doing communion before you at the altar. And often, they're served. And in my church, the clergy can cut in line for communion if they want to. A lot of us don't. We'll go to the back. That's our choice. But people would let us if we tried to, because they honor people that are serving in the church. And just because some people abuse that doesn't mean that it's wrong. This person says, I do know that traditionally it was forbidden to have a toilet in the church. It still is. I don't know any churches that have toilets in them. The toilet's supposed to be separate from the church. If your church has a toilet, I don't know why. And they say, so if we want to return to actual traditions, then we'd be following those. Or we don't eat in the church building at all. I don't know anybody that eats in the church building either. Usually there's a separate building. So this person's either not Orthodox, and again, they're just attacking. Go to Greece or Russia. This is not the custom and parish practice. The Roman Orthodox, it is custom and parish practice. Let the kids go to class. That could be. Not all churches have Sunday school, right? So there are so many comments, and they're all just repetitious, calling us Muslims, saying men should be last, saying it's sexist. Oh, Natty for Theotokos said it's spiritually homo, but she's a total feminist. Don't even listen to her. I don't even think she's American. So she can just, I could be wrong, but I think she's in Canada or Britain or something like that. But I mean, she's like pro deaconess. Yeah, I can't see anything else here. It says, why not families serve together? Because man is the head of the home. So as he goes and gets food, he can serve his family. He could take his plate and give it to his wife. Do you understand this? Guys, this isn't hard. The thing is, and I'm going to end with this, is that we're living in a culture where men are being destroyed, and the natural order, which is the man being the head of the home, being the head of his wife and children, has been overturned. And all you have to do is look at our society and the consequences that it's caused. They just passed a law in Colorado that if in the privacy of your own home you misgender your child, it's child abuse, and they can come in and take your kids. So even as parental rights, they're gone. And it started with men abdicating, with men allowing things like no-fault divorce. I think that should be repealed. I think if you break the marriage covenant, whether you're the wife or the husband, you should pay. You should pay. I don't care what your excuse is. You know, when I was in the military, if you got caught in adultery, you would be dishonorably discharged. It was a military crime. There was a time in America, even back in the 70s, where it was still a crime to commit adultery. And we've lost all of that. And so now people are hooking up and shacking up. That used to be a crime. Buggery, look up that term, was definitely a crime. In the military, dishonorable discharge. In society, you would go to jail. The guy that broke the Nazi code went to jail for buggery because we used to not tolerate these things as a society. And if you think we're making progress, I don't know what planet you're living on. And what we do is the Psalm says it. It says, if the foundation is destroyed, what can the righteous do? To where even something like this inflames people. You put men first in anything. And all of a sudden it's like this gnashing, raging, anger. Yeah, but when men need to be worthy. And I will say this, right? Like for the incel movement, when it comes to marriage and women, I think men do need to make themselves worthy of their wives. I don't think that just because we have a headship, that just means that we don't approach it from a place of humility and love, right? But if you're a young man and you're struggling with pornography, constantly, playing video games, you're not out there being a man, you're not out there working hard, being skilled, being a good, citizen of your country, being active in the church, being a leader, being a warrior, being a builder, God's not going to give you his gems, right? There are very precious, godly women out there that understand these things, and they are looking for a man to lead them and to build their home around, and they are excited about it. and they don't have any issues with this conversation, and they are praying for God to lead them to the right man. And for you to get that kind of woman, you have to develop in yourself to be that kind of man, to make you worthy of that God will grant that to you. And I'm not saying that as a means of condemnation, but the Proverbs say it, that a godly woman is precious. She is the heart of the home. And so, again, I'm going to delete the post. I'm going to leave this video up, though. And I just encourage everybody to continue to pray for Father Peter and pray for his church. And pray for Orthodox ethos and share the ministry. And praise God that we have priests that are willing to stand up even for controversial things. And that hopefully we can start to reverse some of this feminism that's trying to infiltrate our churches. Pray for the Anglicans that are just being wrecked right now. I don't even understand how you can stay in the Anglican church right now, Protestants. I don't see how you could stay in any classical Protestant church. And that's how you know they're a fake vine. Because when you cut the vine off of the tree, it withers and it dies. And if you look at almost every classical Protestant church, Presbyterians, full of all sorts of transgenderism, homosexuality, female press. Yes, there's conservative sides of it, but they're losing out to the bad sides of it. Even the seminaries are being taken over. Lutherans, they got rainbow bishops, and they have whole churches dedicated to ungodly lifestyles, promoting them, which I see those. Whenever I see that rainbow flag over a church, I see it as a church that is or an institution that has been conquered. It's like the enemy of God flying their pride and rebellion in God's face. I think they chose the rainbow because it's like them shaking their fist at God. You gave us this rainbow. You promised you'd never destroy us again. So we're going to do these things openly and wretchedly. We're going to pervert your children. We're going to destroy your cultures. And now, I don't know if you've heard of this, they're literally going to Sodom and going to have one of the largest Middle East festivals to celebrate their awful lifestyle. And then now the Anglicans, right? How can you stay in these institutions? There is one patriarchy left. Because I'm telling you, you guys can say the Pope or Latin Rome. Come on, man. That thing's going downhill so fast that even most Catholic Latins that I know are like, we don't even know what to do about this Pope. I tell them, become Orthodox. Come on over. I got a good book. Reception of the Heterodox, to help you understand how to come into the Orthodox Church when you're outside of the church. And I'm going to give this book away. So keep making comments. And the comments that get the most like or shares, that, the caveat is I don't want someone that's some feminist like Natty that's hateful of Father Peter to get the most because her friends help her and then they try to destroy his book. So you at least have to be seeker or Orthodox. I'm going to ask you when I text you. So I'm going to give it like at least 24 hours with this video up, and then the winner, I will message you on whatever platform I determine, and then I will overnight the book to you as a gift. And thank you for participating. And so in the future, I'm going to be a little more careful because I know there's going to be controversies around his church. And this is such a small thing that it's not even hard to figure out whether or not it's right. But I don't want it to cause a scandal on his freshly new mission that's just getting formed. And I don't want it to start a controversy where none is needed. But you're welcome to message me if you disagree with me, and we can have a conversation. But I really hope more and more priests begin to stand up. I know some priests that are standing up for tradition. You know, I know priests that are telling people don't leave the church before the communion prayers are over. Don't start eating. Don't start drinking coffee. Like, don't exodus from the church. They're teaching etiquette. Come to church dressed appropriately. Control your children, right? Like, don't let them just run amok. It's good to have children in the church, but parents, you should control your children. You should teach them how to be quiet. You should teach them how to respect their elders. It's a great training ground to teach children that there's a time to have reverence and to be silent. And it's work, it's hard. I had 6, so I get it, and my kids weren't the ones that were quiet. They were the ones that when I walk in the church, they'd scream and everyone was looking at me. So I feel you. But, I also needed to learn how to train my kids. And so thank everybody for joining me today. And I am going to start the series on noetic healing here within a couple of weeks. I'm actually working on a small book that I'm just going to self-publish that I want people to have, that's like a distillation of like Orthodox psychotherapy and, some of St. Gregory Palamas's writings and the writings on noetic healing to kind of just distill it so you understand that the primary purpose of Orthodoxy is theosis, it's deification. It's for us to be healed in our nous and then to continue into that process until we see God, till we are unified with God, until we're deified and live eternally with God. It's not just a philosophical system. It's not just reciting right doctrine. It's not just saying creeds. It's literally about encountering the living, risen Christ and being transformed and being noetically healed. And a lot of people, when I came in from the Western evangelical church, I was an addict. I couldn't get free. I tried for 15 years to get free. And even when I'd go to pastors, they couldn't tell me. A lot of them would say, I'm just as messed up as the rest of you. Don't look to me, look to Jesus. That's the responses I would get. And it wasn't until I found the true teaching of the church and the understanding of the energies of God and how they work, why we venerate relics and why we have holy places and the essence energy distinction of God and how that heals us, then I began to heal because I began to put myself in the right places and it transformed my life, and those things just started falling away. My nous was healing. And so I want to do a series on that so that people understand what that means and what that is, and can start realizing they don't need to go to a psychologist necessarily. They just need to expose themselves to the mysteries of the church and show up and get up every time they fall, and they can be healed. So I hope that wasn't too babbling. Father Peter, forgive me for the causing the scandal here, but I pray more priests begin to, and bishops slowly draw us back into a more traditional understanding of gender roles and order in the church, and get away from pragmatism and this feminism that's just infected everything around us. So God bless you, and Lord Jesus Christ.